If I were diagnosed with SIBO today, knowing everything I know now, I'd take a very different path than the one I see most people take. Even after completing advanced training from some of the top SIBO experts like Dr. Allison Seebecker, Dr. Nirala Jacobi, and the SIBO Academy, my plan back then still would have looked something like this. Cut my diet down to chicken and zucchini and jump straight into an aggressive killing protocol. It wasn't until I had years of clinical experience under my belt, working with hundreds of patients and seeing how SIBO really behaves in the real world, that I began to understand the nuance, the kind of nuance you can't get from protocols or textbooks, the kind of nuance you can only get from practicing and seeing many cases. Because I would have skipped right to DEFCON 1 without even checking if my system was ready to handle that level of intensity. And I'm not saying that's what those teachers are proposing, but that's how a lot of us interpret how to address SIBO. So that's not how I approach SIBO anymore. After years of working with patients, going through my own gut struggles, and seeing what actually leads to long-term resolution. My approach now is a lot less like crisis control and a lot more about building a solid, resilient foundation before bringing in the big guns. And that's probably why, even though SIBO is what we see the most often, I mean, it's the root cause of up to 60 to 80% of IBS cases, but we're not called SIBO resolution. Our practice is called nutrition resolution because SIBO is just one part of the big picture. To actually heal, we have to support the whole gut, build resilience, restore function, and create the right conditions for the progress to stick. So, in today's episode, I'm walking you through exactly how I'd handle it, step by step, if I were diagnosed today, which also happens to be how we support our clients with SIBO now. Whether you're brand new to all this or you've been on the SIBO merry-go-round for years, you'll leave today with a clear plan, one that finally breaks the cycle of kill, inflame, crash, repeat. So let's start with what most people get wrong early on. When most people get a SIBO diagnosis or even just suspect they have it, their brain immediately jumps to, okay, how do I kill it? And I get that. The internet is full of, here's the one thing that cured my SIBO posts. And 9 times out of 10, that one thing is an antimicrobial or supplement protocol, whether it's prescription or a long list of herbal supplements. The problem with that is jumping straight into antimicrobials is like deciding to tear down a wasp nest in your backyard without putting on any protective gear. So you might knock down the wasp's nest, but you're going to get stung. And in the case of SIBO, getting stung means flaring hard, feeling worse, and sometimes making the gut more fragile in the process. Killing bacteria is part of the plan, but if your gut is already inflamed, your motility is sluggish, or your digestion isn't working well, you're basically creating the perfect conditions for SIBO to flare up and to bounce right back. So, step one is not kill. Step one is set the stage so the killing phase actually works and actually sticks. The second big mistake is going super restrictive with food, often overnight. This is where people decide that the answer to everything is cutting their diet down to chicken, green beans, and white rice, and then staying there. Now, short-term restriction can give some symptom relief. I'm not denying that, but long-term, it starves your good bacteria, weakens your microbiome, and creates food fear. I've had patients come in who hadn't eaten a single piece of fruit for over a year because it feeds on sugar, and meanwhile, their energy was tanked, their sleep was a mess, and they were still bloated. It's like locking all the doors and windows to keep the burglar out and then realizing you're also locked in and you have no access to any resources. So, we talked a lot about this in the last episode. The kicker is extreme restriction doesn't fix the root of the problem. And if you're still dealing with slow motility, poor digestive secretions, or unaddressed inflammation, SIBO can come right back the minute you try to expand your diet. So, for more on this, check out our last episode, which was called What to Eat on the SIBO Diet. Now, mistake number three is over relying on supplements or killing protocols as the only tool in your toolbox. I've seen supplement shelves look like the clearance bin at a health food store. A little bit of everything, but no real plan. I know you're laughing out there if that's you. I see you because I also have that big cardboard box full of supplements in my cabinet. And while some of those supplements might be helpful, if they're not paired with changes that support digestion, motility, and gut repair, and if they're not part of a step-by-step strategic plan that moves through different phases, they're more like the temporary symptom managers than true solutions. Think of it like patching a leaky boat without finding where the water's actually coming in. You can go through a lot of patches and a lot of money and still end up sinking. The fourth big miss is ignoring motility and gut repair entirely. Most people are never told that motility, especially in the upper GI tract, is the body's built-in prevention symptom against SIBO. The migrating motor complex, or MMC, sweeps leftover food and bacteria down the small intestine between meals. If it's not working properly, it's like skipping garbage day. The trash piles up, starts to smell, and suddenly you're attracting the kind of attention that you don't want. Gut repair is just as important. Your gut lining is not just a passive tube that food passes through. It's an actual active barrier and gatekeeper. It absorbs nutrients and it blocks harmful particles from getting into the bloodstream. It also houses much of your immune system. So when that lining is inflamed or damaged, which is common with SIBO, those tight junctions between the cells can loosen, and that makes the gut more sensitive and less effective at its job. Undigested food particles and bacterial byproducts can slip through, trigger the immune system, and create more inflammation. Once that immune system is on high alert, it's easier to react to foods that you used to tolerate. Inflammation can also slow motility, meaning things are piling up, fermenting, more fermentation, more gas, and more bloating. And because nutrient absorption takes a hit, your body then has fewer building blocks to repair itself. So until the gut lining is restored, you're more reactive, more prone to bloating, and progress will always be limited. So when people go straight into kill mode without addressing these areas first, it's no surprise when they end up on the SIBO merry-go-round. Flare, kill, feel better for a bit, and flare again. And honestly, it's exhausting. If you take nothing else away from this part, let it be this. The fastest way to get lasting results with SIBO is to slow down at the start. That doesn't mean you drag out treatment for years before you take action, but it does mean you spend a moment calming inflammation, supporting motility, and getting digestion in a better place before you bring in antimicrobials. Because the truth is, a well-prepped gut is a lot less likely to relapse, and a less fragile gut means you can actually enjoy eating again without having to memorize the entire low FODMAP food list. Please don't memorize that list like it's going to be your Bible forever. I see whole communities online built around knowing every last detail of the low FODMAP diet, every gram, every measurement, every rule about which foods can be eaten together. It's maddening. Why commit to that lifestyle? Talk about a life sentence. I mean, the goal is not to live in fear of your plate. It's to rebuild your gut and your digestion so you can have freedom, flexibility, and enjoy what you eat. So, now that we've talked about what not to do, let's talk about what to do instead. If I were diagnosed with SIBO today, the first thing I would not do is jump right into a killing protocol. We got that. Instead, I take a step back and look at what I could do to create an environment where healing is possible and where any treatment I do actually does work. Think of this as laying the groundwork so you're not building a house on sand. Because killing bacteria without fixing the conditions that allowed them to overgrow in the first place, that's how you end up in this endless cycle so many people know all too well. Kill, feel better, relapse, repeat. So here's exactly how I would approach it step by step. Number one, calm inflammation first. SIBO always, almost always, let's say almost always, because I don't like always or never. SIBO almost always comes with inflammation. sometimes from the overgrowth itself, sometimes from the gut being irritated for a long time before SIBO even showed up. And inflammation changes everything. It can make your gut hypersensitive, slow your motility, impair your digestion, and make it harder to tolerate foods. If I tried to go in guns blazing with antimicrobials at this point, I'd be adding more stress to an already stressed system. So, here's how I would calm inflammation. And this is what we do with our clients. First, focus on foods I know that I tolerate that are still nutrient dense instead of cutting down to the bare minimum of nutritionally stripped foods. Second, avoid my known personal triggers. For me, that might be things like alcohol or too much caffeine, but don't eliminate everything just in case. Include gentle anti-inflammatory foods like cooked veggies, omega-rich fish, and simple pureed soups. Make sure I'm sleeping enough and managing stress because both can spike gut inflammation. I remember one patient, let's call her Sarah. She came to me after 3 failed SIBO protocols. At the time, she had bloating, fatigue, and could tolerate maybe 6 foods without reacting. Instead of throwing her into another round of antimicrobials, we spent a few weeks just calming her gut. We focused on building her meals around well cooked, easy to digest veggies paired with proteins that didn't sit heavy in her stomach. I had her rotate in a few different tolerated carbs so her microbiome wasn't running on the same thing every day. And we made small swaps to get healthy fats in without overloading her digestion. We even layered in gentle anti-inflammatory foods that she hadn't touched in months, like soft greens and mashed root vegetables, to start expanding her tolerance. Outside of food, we added light movement after meals to help motility, set up an evening wind down routine to calm her nervous system, and adjusted her meal spacing so her gut could actually rest between eating. By the end of that phase, she could eat twice as many foods without bloating before we even touched the SIBO directly. The second thing is supporting motility, and that means MMC and stress. So, one of the first things I'd look at is motility. Specifically, that's how well is your gut's housekeeping wave working between meals. The MMC is that housekeeping wave. It's called the migrating motor complex. And it's basically your built-in cleanup crew that sweeps leftover food and bacteria down the line. And if it's sluggish, bacteria have more time to hang out where they don't belong. And what most people miss here is that supporting motility is not just about taking a supplement. It's about looking at the whole picture, especially the nervous system. Because when you're stuck in fight or flight mode, digestion is not your body's priority. So what I focus on initially is motility. And let's clarify here because most people hear motility and they think about bowel movements. And that is really important. So for my people who have methane dominant SIBO, are constipated, we have to get the bowels moving before we can enter any killing phase. Otherwise, all that inflammation, all of the bacterial die-off byproducts just build up in the gut, get recirculated, and make you miserable. So we absolutely have to get the bowels moving. We have many different ways to do that through diet adjustments, supplements, and gut, brain, and lifestyle things. But we're also talking about the upper GI motility, and that's the migrating motor complex. So for motility, we might be looking at meal spacing for the migrating motor complex, gentle prokinetics if needed, a large intestinal bowel movement motility support, basically get it moving and manage those bowel movements so that we can clean out what we're killing. And we also are talking here about nervous system regulation. So that's daily walks, breathing exercises, and vagus nerve work to tell the body that it's safe to digest. Number 3 is use food to stabilize your blood sugars and digestion. So next, I would make sure that my meals are balanced in a way that keep my blood sugar steady and supported during digestion. Why? Because blood sugar spikes and crashes can alter motility, stress hormones, and inflammation, not to mention making you feel tired and moody. So balanced meals keep energy up and help your gut move more smoothly. For me, that would mean protein at every meal, not just to build and repair tissue, but also because it slows down the absorption of carbs. Healthy fats for satiety and to support nutrient absorption of those fat soluble vitamins. A mix of carbs that I tolerate, which might start with lower FODMAP sources, but not only those. I would want to sprinkle in some higher FODMAP sources in very small amounts to keep feeding my beneficial bacteria. And then fiber in amounts my gut can handle right now, and then increase gradually over time. I've seen this so many times. Someone gets it in their head that SIBO feeds on sugar, so they cut out all carbs. One woman I worked with was living on eggs, chicken, and avocado for months. At first, she thought it was working because her bloating eased up a bit, but then her energy flatlined. She couldn't have a bowel movement without magnesium, and strangely enough, her bloating crept right back in. So when we slowly added back in easy to digest carbs, things like peeled roasted sweet potato and a little parboiled brown rice, her energy started coming back within a week. Her digestion moved better and her bloating actually eased because her bowels were moving better. Next, we layer in targeted treatment. This is based on the type of SIBO. So only after those first three steps are in place would I recommend starting a killing protocol. And here's the key. It shouldn't be random. I would want to know what type of SIBO I have: hydrogen, methane, hydrogen sulfide, or a combination, because each responds to a different approach, and using the wrong strategy can waste time, money, and energy, and sometimes make symptoms worse. For example, hydrogen SIBO tends to respond better to certain herbal antimicrobials and definitely responds great to rifaximin, which is the prescription antibiotic for it. Methane SIBO usually needs a combination approach because methane isn't technically a bacteria. When we have methane SIBO, it's not produced by a bacteria, it's produced by archaea, which can be trickier to target. Hydrogen sulfide SIBO often needs a more specialized and closely monitored approach, sometimes with higher dosing and combination herbs to get results without overwhelming the system. Addressing SIBO in a targeted way isn't just about what you take, it's also about how long you take those things, how you support the gut alongside it, and what you do afterwards to prevent a recurrence. And then the next thing is focusing on repair, not just removal. And this is where gut repair really shines. Once you've reduced the overgrowth, cleared the overgrowth, you want to help the gut lining recover so that it's less reactive, more resilient, and better at keeping bacteria in their proper place. And that might mean targeted nutrients and amino acids that help rebuild the gut lining, things like zinc, glutamine, vitamin A, glycine, serine, proline, through food or through supplements you tolerate, supporting the mucus layer that acts as the gut's protective coating. And that could be with things like partially hydrolyzed guar gum, butyrate, or other short chain fatty acids, certain prebiotics you can tolerate, which help you produce your own short chain fatty acids, mucilaginous herbs like slippery elm, marshmallow root, DGL, or aloe vera. It means immune support to calm inflammation and promote barrier repair, and that could include serum-derived immunoglobulins or colostrum in people who tolerate dairy, soothing, easy to digest foods that reduce mechanical irritation, ongoing motility support to prevent stagnation when the gut lining heals, and gradual reintroduction of tolerated foods to feed the microbiome and maintain a diverse, resilient gut environment. I can't tell you how many people finish a round of antimicrobials or antibiotics and think that they're done. But if the gut lining is still inflamed, you are not out of the woods. Repair is one of the critical things that sets you up for long-term stability. And lastly, we want to gradually rebuild food tolerance. This is one of my favorite parts. This is the thing that so many even naturally focused practitioners, they stop before doing this part. This is the missing piece for so many people. But it's also where a lot of the fear comes in. After months or years of restriction, the idea of adding back foods can feel very risky and scary, but it's absolutely necessary if you want a healthy, diverse microbiome. The key is slow and strategic. Start with small amounts of one new food at a time. Keep portions modest so you don't overwhelm your system. Notice your body's response over the next 24 to 48 hours and gradually build up to larger portions and more frequent inclusion of those foods. It's not unusual for someone to finish SIBO treatment and then try reintroducing a food they've really missed, maybe a bigger salad at lunch or a bowl of lentil soup or a smoothie with chia seeds in it. And while those foods can be great eventually, even one single large portion can overwhelm a gut that's still rebuilding. And then you can get bloated, cramping, and that makes the person worry that the SIBO has relapsed because it feels exactly the same as the SIBO felt. But in many cases, and we talked about this in the last episode, it's not a relapse. It's just too much too soon on your microbiome, your large intestinal microbiome. So those foods are great to add in a salad, a lentil soup, a smoothie with chia seeds, but start smaller. Maybe start with singular foods one at a time versus multiple ingredients together. Cook veggies well, blend up fruits and raw veggies if you haven't had them raw yet, and increase the amounts gradually. And that's all it takes to get back on track. It's like working out in a gym. You wouldn't go in and start lifting heavy weights. Even if those were, you could say, oh, well, I did this routine a year ago. I was lifting all kinds of heavy weights. Well, after a year of not doing it, you can't just go back and start doing that again. So the gut microbiome, building up a resilient gut microbiome works exactly the same way. You have to go in and you got to start at the bottom. Start with the light weights, but be consistent. Do the workout 2 to 3 times a week and let your body adjust and adapt in between those workouts. And then once you can tolerate that workout, that's when you increase the weights just by one increment at a time. And that's exactly how we build up fiber to build a healthy, resilient microbiome. So let's put this all together. If I were diagnosed with SIBO today, my plan would look like this. Calm inflammation first, support motility and nervous system health, use food to stabilize blood sugar and digestion. Then layer in a targeted approach based on the type of SIBO I have. Focus on repair to strengthen the gut lining, and then gradually rebuild food tolerance to diversify the microbiome. I'm going to add one more thing. Pinpoint the different contributors that led to me getting SIBO in the first place and put together a relapse prevention plan. So let me just give you an example. If my SIBO was caused by food poisoning, I would want to put together a relapse prevention plan that addresses that migrating motor complex, which is what's affected when food poisoning causes your SIBO. So I would want to do meal spacing. I would want to do gut brain support, maybe deep breathing, relaxation. And I would maybe even want to take an herbal prokinetic agent like ginger and ginger artichoke blend to help stimulate that movement through the small intestine to help prevent a SIBO relapse. For someone else, maybe their SIBO was caused by some abdominal adhesions. So they might want to go get some visceral manipulation work to help break up those adhesions so the SIBO doesn't come back. So we also want to make sure that we are pinpointing and addressing the root contributors. It's very often more than one thing, but at least one thing. And the order of these things matters. Skipping steps almost always backfires. So this is how you go from constant relapses to getting lasting results and from food fear to food freedom. So what does healing SIBO actually look like? The truth about healing from SIBO, it's not fast. I wish I could say you take a round of antimicrobials, eat perfectly for a month, and then you're done. But that's not how the gut works. Your body needs time to rebuild, rebalance, and relearn how to function without the chaos of an overgrowth. The good news is, though, you don't have to wait until the very end to start feeling better. In fact, you should start seeing little wins along the way, even from the very beginning of the process. And those wins are the breadcrumbs that tell you're headed in the right direction. So, what do I mean by small wins? A lot of people think healing only counts when they're totally symptom free and they can eat whatever they want. But in reality, starting to heal looks more like this. You can eat a food you couldn't handle a month ago. Suddenly, you're not reacting to it. Bloating that used to last all day now clears up in a couple of hours. Bathroom habits are getting more predictable and less dramatic. You notice you have a lot more energy to do normal life things. You're not just trying to survive to get through the day. These small shifts are the proof that your gut is starting to calm down, even if you're not at the finish line yet. I tell my clients to write them down before you start. Write down how you're feeling, write down all your symptoms, write down how that's affecting your mentality, your psyche, your emotion, the different things and people in your life. Write it all down and then write it down again every 2 weeks or every month along the way because it's very easy to forget how far you've come because our minds are always focused on the next hurdle, right? We're always focused on the thing that's bothering us, the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's very easy to not see how much progress you've made. So, food freedom is the North Star here. One of the biggest markers of true healing is more food freedom, not in a go eat whatever you want without consequence kind of way. I mean, can anyone do that, honestly? But in the sense that you're no longer trapped in a 10 food rotation. You can travel without packing every single meal in advance. You can eat at a friend's house without bringing your own safe dish. And you don't have to cross examine every ingredient list like some kind of detective. This doesn't happen overnight. It's built gradually, one reintroduced food at a time, until you have a diverse, satisfying diet that feeds you and your microbiome. And the thing is, the more variety you have, the more resilient your gut becomes, which keeps you out of that relapse cycle. If you want a shortcut to get started with this, so I do have meals for you that keep symptoms calm if you're just starting or if you're very symptomatic, while also gently widening your food variety. That's exactly what my 7-day SIBO diet plan is for. It's full of recipes that help you to balance motility, blood sugar, and support gut repair without keeping you stuck in endless restrictions. So we'll put the link to that in the show notes to give you kind of a jump start. We're also looking for fewer flares and faster recovery. Another sign that you're on the right track is that flares happen less often, and when they do, you bounce back faster. In the early days, a flare might knock you out for several days with bloating and pain and fatigue and feel like it's never going to end. But with a healthier gut and better tools, you can often cut that down to a day or two. You know what foods to dial back to, how to support your motility, and how to calm inflammation quickly. And that's the difference between living in constant fear of the next flare and feeling confident that you can handle it. Your system's also more resilient. Your system, just because you do have better motility, because your inflammation has calmed down, because the bacteria has started to clear, your reactions are less dramatic and they don't last as long. And better digestion does not just mean no bloating. When I say better digestion, I don't just mean that your stomach looks flatter, although it will. I also mean you actually start to feel hungry before meals. A lot of people with SIBO, a lot of you can relate to this. You stop feeling hungry. You feel full and bloated all the time. So, a lot of what our patients report when they start feeling better is, oh my gosh, I actually feel what hunger feels like again. You also feel satisfied after eating instead of just feeling stuffed or feeling full, overfull. You start absorbing nutrients better, so your energy, mood, and even skin improve, and your bowel movements are regular and complete without needing half of your supplement cabinet to have a bowel movement. So all of this comes from a gut that's functioning well again, moving food through at the right pace, breaking it down efficiently, and keeping bacteria where they belong. And our goal is long-term stability. Symptom suppression is awesome, honestly, sometimes necessary to get through the day. But the real goal is long-term stability, and that's what allows you to live your life without planning it around your gut. And that means that your gut microbiome is diverse enough to handle the occasional splurge meal or stressful week without unraveling. It means your motility is strong, your gut lining is healthy, and you have the resilience to recover from little bumps in the road without a full-blown relapse. Don't rush this process. The biggest mistake I see is people get impatient and they skip steps, usually straight to killing protocols, or they abandon the repair phase as soon as the symptoms improve. And that's like stopping physical therapy the minute your sprained ankle stops hurting. So maybe you can walk on it now, but without full rehab, it's way more likely to get injured again. The gut's the same. Healing the overgrowth is just the start. Full repair is what keeps you from ending back at square one. So, if you're navigating SIBO right now, or if you've got that gut feeling, sorry for the pun, that something deeper is going on, please don't wait until it spikes. I know how tempting it is to just get through the week or the month and hope things settle on their own. But as we've talked about today, the gut doesn't just magically rebuild itself after a flare or after a round of treatment. And that's why I'm inviting you to my free live masterclass, Fix Your Gut Before the Holidays Hit. We are going to cover exactly how to approach gut healing strategically this fall so that you're not sitting at your Thanksgiving table pushing food around on your plate, wishing you started sooner. I'll walk you through the steps I'd take if I were starting my own healing journey today, so you have a clear, realistic, and strategic plan instead of a list of random gut health tips from the internet. The class is happening September 4th. It's totally free and it's live, which means you can bring your questions. Just tap the link in the show notes to sign up. So if you're ready to stop living in reaction mode and actually get ahead of your gut symptoms before the holiday chaos begins, grab your spot now. The link's in the show notes, and I cannot wait to see you there.